you. That's a very grand introduction. I'm Rosie. As our colleague said, I currently work at GDS, which is the Government Digital Service, but I work in a kind of consultancy capacity with the Cabinet Office. So I have also worked at DIT and MOJ, and I'm moving on shortly to work with the College of Policing. So feel free to ask any questions about any of those as well, if that's interesting. So I'm currently in a team that is called the Digital Data and Technology Profession Team. And we're responsible for projects and initiatives aimed at attracting, recruiting, growing, and critically retaining great talent within the civil service. We currently have about 17,000 people in the British government working specifically on digital projects, but there is also a massive consultancy culture. So if you want to work on digital projects in the government, you do not just need to be a civil servant to do that. Every department has a large number of in-house consultants who are recruited directly into government, but there also are, as you, I suppose, not surprisingly, a very heavy presence with the Big Four and other departments too. So if you're interested in government more widely, this is not just a plug to become a civil servant. This is what is happening in government from a digital point of view, and how is emerging technology changing that. So I am a user experience expert at heart. I'm not actually an artificial intelligence expert. I came into this role from a strategic point of view to look at answering this question. Why is that not working? Oh, because it's on the wrong thing. Where's the clicky thing? Here. Is this what? This question. So what might leadership look like in our future government? And to answer that question, there's a caveat first. I'm not going to talk about how you can become a senior civil servant, how can you can become the permanent secretary of the Cabinet Office. That's not my gig, that's not my deal. Much like speakers before me, I'm going to talk about leadership at all levels. So I'm not the most senior person in my team, but certainly they're not the only, my boss is not the only leader in that team. So to Amanda's point earlier, it's about stature versus status, and how do we make sure that we're embedding the right kind of skills and capability at every level. I'm going to talk you through where digital government has gone before, where it is now, and where it's going in the future, to give context as to what kind of skills we might need moving forward, what kind of skills you guys might be looking to develop if you wanted to work for digital gov in the future. So between 2010 and 2018, government changed a lot. Digital government changed beyond recognition. I'm sure many of you have seen shows like Yes Minister or The Thick of It, and think that that's probably what government is like. Some bits of government are still like that. I used to work at a directorate that I described as being a cross between The Thick of It and the IT crowd. It wasn't great, but digital transformation has fundamentally reshaped government in the past 10 years. So does anybody remember what the old government website used to look like? Does anybody remember DirectGov? Right, yeah, it used to look like this. This was the government website for Cabinet Office owned this. It looks a bit like what the BBC website used to look like. At its heart, it's kind of clunky, it's old-fashioned, it's critically, to the point made earlier on what's the business problem, finding what you need on this website was near on impossible. And it wasn't just this website. This is an awful picture, but these were all the other websites too. So there were over 100 separate government websites to go for specific information. You had to know which department you wanted to talk to find the answer to your problem. It was awful. And in 2010, a report was written that set up the Government Digital Service as a result of it. So it was concluded that we should bring everything under one website. 2010 feels quite late to be doing that. It was quite late to be doing that. We were late to the party, but we do now have this website, which is still in progress, but works much better. So GDS is responsible for the overhaul of this website. It consolidated hundreds of other websites, and we achieved this through a focus on user-centered design. So any of the major apps or web services that you use right now, whether that's Netflix, Spotify, BBC website, all of those are designed with two key principles in mind. One is user-centered design, the second is agile delivery. And bringing those two things together is how you need a core understanding of those two things if you want to ever work in tech. is kind of my first takeaway. So look up those two things if you don't know what I'm talking about. It's user-centered design and agile delivery. This website was built by researching with citizens, building what citizens told us that they needed, and developing the products iteratively. We're still building this. It is not done. It is never done. The job is never finished. This revolution needed digital leadership. To design gov.uk, we needed a wealth of product experience, content design, user experience design, user researchers, and as a result of that, it dramatically shifted what the government civil service looked like. So we went from the IT department being on the 3rd floor and never talking to anyone and being someone who fixed your computer when it broke, to being the lifeblood of most departments, particularly the Cabinet Office. So there are currently 17,000 digital professionals working on projects largely hosted on gov.uk. Many of these are incredible experts in their fields. I'm very proud to be part of an amazing digital team. But the future holds completely new challenges, and we don't quite know what those look like yet. That's where my job comes in, and that's where you guys potentially come in the future. So technological, why is this not working anymore? There we go. Technological change has reshaped the workforce continually for 200 years, right? This is not new. The Industrial Revolution fundamentally reshaped what society looked like, and we're seeing that again. But the speed at which we're having to adapt to digital change right now is largely due to a change in the amount of data that we process and the ability to process it quickly. So we have gone from, why am I not working? In the last 24 months, more data has been collected than in any of the other years put together combined. So we have more data now to play with than we've ever had, which is incredible and terrifying. It's made technologies like these possible. I'll send around the link afterwards if you want to watch the Gartner video on this. It's very interesting as what their 2019 predictions are going to be. But the quantity of the data is made possible by processing power. So my second takeaway for you to look up when you're bored at home is to read this book. I'm not going to give this lecture. This is not my area of expertise. But buy this book. It will change your life. It will explain to you how the world currently operates and where it's come from before. It was my 101 before I started my current role. It's incredible, but please look in the library or buy it used. We've cut down plenty of trees already. I don't want to encourage another 50 copies of this book to necessarily be bought new. You can get it for £3.60 on Amazon. Other services are available. So what's the government doing now? We know that we've got, where's it gone? All of these things, maybe, to play with. But government, as I said, it's not always the quickest to the party. It also has two main challenges: funding and resourcing, skills, getting the right people in the door. The people who know how to do these things are expensive. They also mostly get snapped up by Amazon, Facebook, Google. We're competing with the best on this stuff. So from 2018 to 2020, government committed to a £1 billion sector deal for AI, which effectively means we've committed 20 million of that 1 billion in, let me get this right, in GovTech initiatives that will improve the delivery of public services. So that's everything from transport to health to education to the environment. We are looking at how we can use those 9 technologies, or 8 technologies, to improve the efficiency of government. This will bring together existing work that's already being done. It will bring it in centrally, and the aim is that public bodies start to share this information internally. It's a really big endeavour. A lot of it is incredibly unknown. The unknown unknowns, the unknown unknown unknowns. Government's really complex. Where do we start? We're actually starting with robotics. That's largely where our efforts have been between 2018 and 2020. And you might ask why that is. It's mostly because that's where the biggest gains can be made, quickest, cheapest, and at scale. So automating processes that typically needed manual and often repetitive work. There's a lot of that in government. There's a lot of processing that needs to be done. We're a workforce of over 5 million, if you include everybody who works for the public sector. And there is a lot of that we can use off-the-shelf products to solve. So robotic process automation is, or robotic automation processing, is largely what we are calling that within Gov. And a good example of that is the online divorce program, which you may have heard about in the news. It got quite a lot of press, that you can now file for a divorce online. You do not need a lawyer. As long as both of you don't want to contest the divorce, you can do this online. Now, this obviously has meant we have a much larger number of forms to process, and they are using robots in the back end to fix that. It won an award last year. It's groundbreaking. It's first of its kind in the world. It's really, really cool shit. We are also experimenting with various aspects of machine learning. A good example of this is the gov.uk website, for example. So there are literally thousands of web pages on that site. We realized we needed a better taxonomy system, and would have taken hours for GDS content teams to tag those pages. Instead, they've worked with some fairly complex algorithms to analyze what the web content looks like, assign labels, and then the machine can learn what is right and wrong from that. So the beginning, that had quite a lot of content team input. People say, humans sitting down and saying, yes, this is right, no, this is wrong, and they needed to learn from that. But now it's got it together, we don't really need to do anything. So it is constantly tagging and reclassifying thousands of pages of gov.uk content so that citizens can find what they need easier, which basically makes that search bar work on the homepage. There is also some work being done with image recognition in Gov. So powerful image recognition software is being used by Department for Transport to monitor traffic flows and be able to advise on city planning and rerouting for crisis situations. So if I'm right in claiming this as well, that's being done through drone technology. So there are a series of drones that are programmed to be able to very rapidly classify in real time what vehicles are owned by who and what they're doing and where they're trying to go. So there's lots of cool stuff happening, is my point here. There's also some stuff happening with self-driving cars in the Ministry of Defence, but I probably shouldn't talk about that anyway, so we'll skip on. So how's it preparing for the future? So that's 2018 to 2020. In the future, we've got this AI review happening, which was announced in the budget last October, and aims to effectively scale what we're already doing. How do we do that? We need more people to know how to do it. So it comes down, sorry, this is a link to all the projects we could look at, but we don't have time. So navigating this landscape, it comes down to, do we have the right people in government or in consultancies to know how to do this for us? So when I was doing my A-levels in 2008, my form tutor told me that they were aiming to train us for jobs that didn't yet exist. And I remember thinking that was just this terrifying concept. I had too much going on already in that year, and I didn't want the pressure of that as well. But actually, I'm going to tell you that again. We currently are training people for jobs we do not yet know that they exist. In the next year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, UK government will look very different. That's not just because of the political context that we're working with right now. It's also because technology is fundamentally reshaping what it's going to look like. So I love this quote. We're building the plane and we're flying it at the same time. We are trying to upskill the UK civil service with a whole bunch of skills needed to become both pilots and builders. So in the last couple of minutes, I'm going to run through some top skills I think builders and pilots need and how you can potentially get ahead of the game with learning what some of those leadership traits are going to be. So it's about creating general technicians or technical generalists. That's sort of how we talk about builders versus pilots. The key there is that both of them have to have some level of technical. So we really need to start to understand that technology is not just this thing that happens on the third floor. Across all levels of leadership, whether that's your highest rungs of seniority in civil service or your lead project consultant, knowing both how to run the team, how to keep the team on board, how to do user-centered design, how to do agile delivery, but also what AI is going to be really important. And I use AI there as a insert cool new tech here. It doesn't necessarily have to be AI. We have to understand that data science, analyzing now that plethora of data that we now have, it's a team sport. It's not just we have a bunch of data scientists who sit over there and they don't come talk to us. We go and ask them when we have problems. They need to be embedded into every team. And to do that, everybody else in the team has to know what they do. So I'm not telling you to go away and learn how to use Python or learn how to use R, but I'm saying understand the basics, make friends with your computer science colleagues at university, understand what they're learning, see if it's interesting, and understand the fallout from what they will be doing in the future. We also need to bring in expertise, not just at engineering level, but also at psychologists and anthropologists and political scientists. Government isn't run by technologists. It's run by PPE grads, history grads, sociologists. It's run by chemists and physicists and a whole range of smart people. Technology has just become a new theme that everybody needs to understand. There also are a number of leadership skills that have always been useful, but are now matter more than ever. So, to the points made earlier, humility has never been more important. We don't know what we're talking about most of the time. And being able to say that is totally fine, because somebody in the room will. And of a civil service community of 500,000 people in central government alone, somebody in that community is going to know the answer to your problem. Raising your head above the parapet and saying, hey, I might be a very senior member of the team, but I have no idea what's going on here, who can help me, will get you really, really far. And that's true in all aspects of your life. That's not just how to be good in digital government. Clarity is also more important than ever. So the problems we're trying to address are more complex than they've ever been, and the solutions we can use are also arguably more complex than they've ever been. So being really clear on what it is you want or what it is you think you need has never been more important. Read around your topics, understand the context with what you're working with. Empathetic design, we have to bring user-centered design principles and knowledge about emerging tech together. If you just have a UX designer over there and a data scientist over there and they don't talk to each other, you end up with some really cool tech that looks really ugly and no one ever wants to use, or something really shiny and beautiful that doesn't solve the problem. You have to bring these two groups together. And as leaders, it's your job to understand both of those disciplines and how they would work together in the future, and both of those personality types that tend to end up in those two roles and how to bring them together. And I'm going to leave you with one parting thought that I think, again, has been always been important, but is now more important than ever. Keep learning. University is a great place to learn in a consolidated, you're allowed to do it, you are paid by your student loan to do it now for the 3 years that you're in it. That is not the end of your learning experience. Your degree will be valuable. Your first few years out of university will also be valuable. But keep reading and keep watching and keep asking for help and keep asking clever people to help you out. Don't always look up, look down too. You guys know more about a whole bunch of stuff than I do. The people graduating 5 years after you will also know more than you do about a whole bunch of different stuff. We're turning those hierarchies on their head. But please keep reading, keep learning. And start with that book, because it's genuinely really great. I was out of time ages ago, so I'm going to stop talking now. Thanks.